All right, you guys, I'm just going to give you an overview for your final project and paper. Wanting to kind of review the last few weeks. So previously I told you we didn't want you working too far ahead in the first portion of class for the reason of getting a little mixed up and not really knowing what different definitions you're going to need to know and include in your final project and final paper. So, first things first, I'm just going to show you Module 2 online here, the LMS. I've already clicked here, but if you scroll down, it's going to show you your week 4 links, and I have week 5 open for you as well. And then here's your final project outline and then final project overview. So I'm going to go through those first. I'll pull up our outline first. So this is the one that's going to be due, I forget what day, I think it's July 3rd. We'll go through due dates in a minute. But just so you know what the gist is, what we're looking for in the next few weeks. I know we're way ahead and your project is not due for quite a while, but I just want to be able to talk you through it. So this is your outline that you would hand in to me, and then during the week of July 11th through 17th, your group will meet with me for a 30-minute segment that you guys can choose. I'll just send out a Google Doc and you guys can pick a time that works for you, and we'll do that virtually. And what we'll do is we'll go through what you guys put on your final project outline here. The thing that is really important is the more you put into this final project outline, the less work you're going to have to do later. So you really do want to do a thorough job on this outline part, because then half of the hard work is done for you by the time that you have to actually write out the paper and divvy up each section for each member of your group. So first part just talks about like the purpose of the assignment. You're going to also put your names on one sheet and just hand one in for me like we've done before. Vulnerable population that you selected. I'm trying to get this thing off. There we go. And then what makes your chosen population vulnerable. And then you're going to summarize what you collect from the windshield survey and its relation to the chosen population. This part, if you did not do your windshield survey in an area that pairs with your vulnerable population, that's totally okay. So don't feel bad if you didn't know in advance like what type of a vulnerable population you wanted to choose when you did your windshield survey. That's totally fine. So just put not applicable there if your windshield survey was not done on a neighborhood that pairs with your vulnerable population that you chose. The next sections are really important. So what are the health needs of your population? We already did this in a previous assignment where you had to look up the health needs on the Healthy People 2030 website of whatever you chose for a topic. So you're going to list your top 3 health needs that this population needs that you're kind of focused on. And then after you've figured out their health needs, then you're going to write your nursing diagnosis. Remember that your nursing diagnosis is going to be framed a little bit different than our other care plans throughout nursing. So you're going to say risk for, and you're going to put what they're at risk for, among, related to, and as evidenced by is the optional portion. Maybe you don't want to list an as evidenced by. That's okay. I gave you some great examples in previous PowerPoint presentations, but I can read one off to you. So one good example would be risk for ineffective family health management among single working parents related to financial and time constraints. And then you could also put as evidenced by, and then whatever statistics that you've found on that topic. So like I said, as evidenced by is optional, but if you'd like to include that, you sure can. So you're going to mention many health needs of whatever population that you considered vulnerable, and then you're going to kind of narrow down what your biggest nursing diagnosis is or what their biggest problem is that you want to focus on trying to help them with. So this whole project and paper, the purpose of it is to find, basically assess your population, your vulnerable population, and then you're going to hypothetically determine what you would like to do to help them. So you're going to come up with some way to correct whatever one of their health needs are that you really want to focus in on. It is hypothetical, but it really does help you envision what a public health nurse does from start to finish. And I'll give you a couple of examples as we walk through. So your next thing would be your action plan. You'd want to state what your plan is from here. So I've got my nursing diagnosis. This is what we're going to focus on, and this is our goal. And then you're going to list potential interventions to explore. So you're going to be using your 3 levels of prevention. This is crucial in this paper. So you want to do primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention right here. Hang on here, my computer's doing something weird. One sec here. All right, so action plan again, you're picking what your goal is, and then how you're going to do it. You're going to make sure you're first listing your 3 levels of prevention, primary, secondary, and tertiary. And then resources and collaboration existing to assist with these interventions. This is an area where you want to start packing in information. So this is a good time. Like I said, the more work you do up front in your outline phase with your teammates, the less you're going to have to do later. So really be thinking about different resources and divvy up the work. One of you should probably be looking at 211's website or the helpline website. That is one of the most crucial tools for any public health nurse because it's up to date daily. Like they update every day where government funds are going to be able to distribute free help for any category: food, shelter, transportation, anything and everything you can find on that 211 or that helpline site. So really make sure that one person at least is looking through at the resources in the Sioux Falls area. You would want to put that in your paper for sure. Other ones that you definitely want to look into, we've already had you practice Healthy People 2030 website, so you should be somewhat familiar with navigating around that. Now you know exactly what your goal is going to be and what your vulnerable population is going to be, so it's going to be easy for you to go to the Healthy People 2030 and snoop around for more information from that resource. So I'm just listing a couple of the many resources for public health nursing. Don't forget your intervention wheel if you don't really know where to start. That intervention wheel is a great way to determine different angles of how you can help your vulnerable population. Do they need counseling? Do they need a community that is in similar issues as them? Maybe it's alcohol withdrawals or things like that. That little wheel is just a great tool to kind of get you started and getting your brain kind of thinking of different things that you want to implement to help this population, depending on what you chose for an action plan. And then last but not least, make sure that you let me know what questions you have moving forward after we meet in our 30-minute time as a small group. But yeah, I can't stress enough, just be thinking about your vulnerable population, all the things that they need, top 3, but then also focusing in on one that you want to try to potentially resolve, quote unquote. A good example that somebody had last year was veterans. They chose veterans that were homeless. So a key way to make sure you're narrowing down your vulnerable population is exactly like what I just mentioned. Picking a population that you feel is vulnerable, like individuals experiencing homelessness, but then also narrowing it down a little bit more by saying a different thing like children that are experiencing homelessness or veterans that are experiencing homelessness. It's really going to help you narrow down your search when you're trying to find data and further information, evidence-based things that they have done for people, that type of stuff for your paper. When you keep it very generic, like those individuals that are experiencing homelessness, that's pretty broad and it makes it very difficult to find your information. So that's my added tip. I'll be trying to help you tweak your populations a little bit if I feel like they're too broad, because you're only going to struggle if that's the case. So what else did I want to mention? I think I'm done with the outline portion. I'm just going to move on to the actual grading rubric and final project information. I'm going to make this a little tighter here. Hopefully you can see it. All right, so this is also on LMS. It's just talking about what vulnerability is, talks about our objectives. I'll let you read that on your own. The paper itself is worth 45 points, and then your actual presentation is worth, the poster presentation that we're going to do over WebEx or Zoom is worth 35 points. The poster part is very easy. All you're literally going to do is copy and paste little paragraphs from your paper. So that part's very simple. We actually have a poster template that you have to use. So you're going to be copying and pasting the same information into the same type of template as all of your classmates. The only thing that might be a little bit different is if you add a few pictures is all. So very easy. Don't stress out about the poster. Very user-friendly and easy, and you're just going to be presenting it on Zoom or WebEx. Here's our due dates from the syllabus. So your group members, you're going to pick your vulnerable population, and that's due today at midnight. And then the vulnerable populations methods and final project outline is due July 3rd by 11:55, and that's just so that I can kind of peek over it before we meet in small groups, and then you get the week off of 4th of July afterwards, excuse me. And then your mandatory group meetings are going to be 30 minutes, like I said, and we'll do that over WebEx or Zoom, and you'll be able to pick whatever date or time you want between the dates of 11th through the 17th. So I'll give you a bunch of options and you guys can choose. And then your final paper is due the 24th of July, and also your poster is due the 24th of July, just so I can peek it over quick before you end up starting present to each other. And then, like I said, we'll present from 9 to 11 over WebEx, where everybody will just have a turn. I believe there's only 4 groups total for this round of summer accelerated program, so it'll be easy for you guys to present to each other. It only takes about 5 or 10 minutes to present your poster. And then last but not least, before we're done with the semester, you have a chance to do peer reviews and get points for it. So you receive, I believe, 5 points for each of these, a peer review and a group eval. Just saying like what you thought of the poster when you watched it, when you see it over WebEx, and then also your individual group, how everybody contributed. So please make sure that you are contributing an equal amount, just like you do for evidence-based practice. We want to make sure that everybody is kind of pulling their load. One sec here. Oh boy. Technical difficulties today. All right, last but not least, just how the points are awarded. So for this section, it's talking about the paper. If you'll read through, it shows you how much each little topic within the methods section is worth. When you get through, you are going to list your 3 health needs, just like on your outline. You're going to summarize your windshield survey, or you can summarize a hypothetical one if you would like. If you did not complete a windshield survey on the population you chose, that's okay too. So you would just state that in your paper. Identifying strengths and community resources available to your population. So like I said, going into that helpline site and just looking around for our zip code area, what the different resources are is huge. And then your nursing diagnosis is worth 2 points itself. And then you're going to create your action plan. So you're going to summarize what interventions you want to have happen, what your goals are, and what outcome you want for your individual population. Another thing that's really important to mention is when you list your vulnerable population throughout your paper, you want to make sure that you're not calling them a certain thing. You're not saying the homeless, because really that's making their vulnerability define them. So earlier I kind of mentioned individuals experiencing homelessness. That's kind of how you want to always state your vulnerable population throughout your papers and in life in general. You don't ever want somebody to feel like they are being named as whatever their vulnerability is. You know what I mean? So really be thinking about that when you are writing your paper. How do you want to state your population throughout your paper to where it's appropriate? What else did I mention? It'd be fine, like I mentioned, veterans experiencing homelessness. Veterans is not offensive. It's just a statement of that's what they've done for our country. So that would be a way that you could still state it without being offensive in any way, is that they're experiencing homelessness right now, but it's not defining their vulnerability is not defining them as a person. So had to put that 2 cents in there. It's very important that your paper kind of speaks well to the vulnerability itself and doesn't allow that vulnerability to define the person. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, so yeah, your action plan here. Primary, secondary, and tertiary interventions are definitely required. You've got to list those, and they have to relate to whatever your action plan is. So a good example would be, I'll tell you a little story. We've had a public health school nurse that noticed that the school that she worked at, the children were a little bit more obese than what she typically saw at other schools when she floated as a school nurse. And then so she did a windshield survey, which was her assessment step. and noticed that there were no playgrounds within like several miles of this school. There was only the small playground that they had on their school's campus. So that was her assessment portion, is the windshield survey part. Then she just kind of collected data from the other schools, determining that to where she could prove that like this individual school had a higher obesity rate. And then she brought that as a policy development level. I'm just going through your three core functions of public health: the assessment, policy development, and assurance. That also is required within your paper. So she assessed the community, and then she went to the policy development level. She brought it to our city level and mentioned the data that she found, and then proposed or created an action plan that we need to come up with grant dollars to be able to create another playground closer to that school to where it can help promote better health for that population of children. And then the assurance phase for her was making sure that it got done and making sure that it was on a timely timeline. So she kept following up with the city once she received the grant and was allotted the funds. And she just kind of had to complete that assurance phase of following up and making sure that this park got created and within a timely amount of a couple of years from when they received the grant. Pretty neat story, but I just wanted to mention that as a great example of your three core functions of public health: that assessment, policy development, and assurance. And you have to have that in your paper as well. But it also just speaks to her action plan. And then she probably had a primary, secondary, and tertiary intervention as well. But she was really focusing on the kids that are already obese. What can I do to try to correct that? What can we do in that case? But she probably had some other goals as a primary, secondary, and tertiary intervention as well. But that was her main goal, was creating a playground. So that was kind of neat. It's a good example. And her vulnerable population was children. But then also they were obviously struggling with probably not great healthy options for foods in that area. And then also she noticed right away with the windshield survey that there was a high lack of available resources for them to be able to exercise like they need to. What else did I want to mention? You guys can read through here on your own time. Oh, another thing I wanted to mention, they already talk about your community, systems, and individual family focused practice. So these are your levels within your intervention wheel. So see how all these sections are kind of pulling from the information that you received the first few weeks. I'm hoping this kind of makes sense for you. Key informants are always fun. Those are your individuals that are pros about whatever vulnerable population you're dealing with. So maybe it's somebody that works at the banquet when you when you're trying to consider any vulnerable population that is experiencing homelessness. Maybe you're going to speak to or interview a key informant that works at the banquet. Things like that. Those key informants can give you added information that you probably don't even think of that these populations need. So that's probably one of your biggest starting points of your paper, is to get information when you interview your key informant. They're just so helpful because they think about things that you don't think about because they see that population more frequently than you do. So added tip there. I do have to cut off of this soon. I know it's going to stop me shortly. I think that's all I wanted to mention. The rest you guys can read through on your own. And then the poster presentation part, very easy. We can talk about that during your small group time in your outline portion. I'll bring it up on the screen when we have our 30 minutes together, and I'll just show you exactly what you're going to do. You're literally going to copy and paste. So, all right, I hope this helped a little bit. If it doesn't, that's okay too, because we get a whole half hour together where I can help guide you further. All right, have a good night.